Hello guys, this lesson is about used to and would, and also be used to and get used to. As we have seen in the previous classes, we use used to talk about past habits or past routines or situations or states that were true in the past but they aren't true in the present anymore. But also in this case we also have would. Remember that we have seen would as a modal verb, but in this case we are using it instead of used to. The difference between used to and would, both are used to talk about past routines, states, or things that we did in the past but we no longer do in the present. But there's a little difference between these two phrases, and the difference is that we can use used to in situations or states that were true in the past but aren't true now. Like this: Chris didn't used to like living in a flat but he does now. Or Pete used to own a cottage. Pete used to own a cottage. In this case, these are not routines. These are situations or states. And would is used to talk about past routines, like this: We would go to the library every Saturday. We used to go to the library every Saturday. We can use used to or would to talk about a past habit or a past routine. But when we're talking about a past situation or a past state, we only use used to. Okay, remember that the grammar structure is pretty easy because we use a subject, used to, and the verb in infinitive form. Of course, a complement and a time expression that talks about that refers to the past. To make it negative, we use a subject. We use the auxiliary did and not. Remember that we can make a contraction and it's didn't. So we can use subject, didn't, used to, verb, complement, and time expression. But can you notice that in this case we have used to, and here we have used to. We have a little difference. That's because in this case is in affirmative, so we are using in the or auxiliary for past states with the in past form, used. But in the case of the negative form, as we are using our auxiliary in past, that is did, we take off the D, so we write used. It happens the same with the questions. We use used. Okay, so in the question form we start with auxiliary did, subject used to, verb, complement and time expression, and remember all the time we have to write a question mark at the end of a question. And remember that as we are making a question, we have some short answers. Remember that the short answers are composed by three elements that are yes or no, subject, and the auxiliary for that tense. In this case, remember that our auxiliary is did. So, the questions are: Did she used to eat? Yes, she did. No, she didn't. So we have yes, subject, did, to make it affirmative. To make it negative, we have no, subject, and didn't. Remember that we use the contraction here. Okay, now let's go with would. In the case of would, it happens almost the same that used to, because in affirmative form we use subject, would, verb, a complement or time expression. I would eat, she would eat, we would eat. In negative form we use subject, would not, and verb. Remember that we can use a complement or time expression. To make a question we start with would. In this case would is their own auxiliary, so we use would, subject, verb, complement or time expression, and never forget your question mark. To make sure answers, remember that we have to use 3 elements. So we have yes or no, subject, would or wouldn't. We also can make a contraction, that is the contraction from would and not. We take off the O and add an apostrophe between the N and T. So if we say yes, I would. Yes, it would. Yes, they would. No, you wouldn't. No, she wouldn't. Or no, we wouldn't. Remember that used to talk about past states, past situations, past routines, or past habits. And would is only to talk about past routines or past habits. We can use would to talk about a past situation or a past state. Now let's continue with be and get used to. In this case we have 2 different grammar forms because they talk about different situations. In the case of be used to, like this, be used to, we can use a verb with ing termination or a noun, and we use it to talk about something that is usual and familiar because we have experienced or we have seen it before. Like this, Julie is used to living in the city center. We are used to the animals in our farm. For example, if I don't wish it and I don't want it, but if in a near future or in the future we have to be in a quarantine again, we can say we are used to living in a quarantine, because it's not a routine, it's not something that happens all the time, but as we have lived it for a first time, it's not something new. So that's the use of be used to, is to talk about something that is not unusual or is not something strange because we have done it or we have experienced it before, but it's not something familiar. And in the case of get used to, let me show you. In the case of get used to, we use also a verb with ing termination or a noun, and we use it to say that something becomes or starts to feel familiar because we often experience or see it. Well, let's take again the case or the example of the quarantine. In this case, we can say, I am getting used to living in quarantine, because maybe I guess we are living 4 days in a quarantine, so you are getting used to it. It feels familiar to you. It is becoming a part of your routine because maybe some of you are happy or some of you are stressed, but it is becoming your routine. So in this case we are using get used to talk about something that is becoming familiar because we are often doing this activity or often watching something. Okay, so in this case we use be used to or get used to. According to the tenses, we can use these grammar structures to all the tenses. We can use in a past, present, or future. This is not it's not a rule that we only use it with one tense. We only use it in present. No, we can use it with all the tenses, and this structure changes according the tenses. Here we have some examples like this. David was used to living by himself. In this case, David was used to living by himself is a sentence in past and is talking about the first one, be used to. Remember that we can change be according the tense. In this case, how do we know that it's past? Because was is the verb be in past. Remember that we have was or were. And that means that David, it wasn't strange or it wasn't something new for David to live by himself. Then we have David is getting used to living by himself. Maybe this first sentence was when David moved by himself and it wasn't something new, but maybe they were his first dates. And then we have this, David is getting used to living by himself. That means that David was becoming familiar to living by him or by his own. So in this case we are using is getting used to and verb with ing termination. This is present continuous because we have the verb to be and or auxiliary in this case with ing termination, used to, and verb with ing termination. Then we have David is used to living by himself. This is in present simple. I'm telling you that it's not something new for him. And then we have David will get used to living by himself. In this case, I am talking about future simple because we have will. So we are going to change the sentences according the tense. Remember that we have two structures that are be used to and get used to, and both of them can be completed with a verb with ing termination or a noun. Be used to is to talk about something that is not new because we have seen it or experienced it before, and get used to is to talk about something that is becoming a routine for us. Okay, that's all with be and get used to. And also remember that we can change it according the tenses. We can use it with the three tenses, present, past, or future, and the structure is the same, but we can change some things. Okay, so that's it. Hope you liked the class. Hear you next week. Goodbye.